Leading a virtual team can be hard. Leading a global virtual team can be even harder when you have employees who are scattered all over the globe in different time zones and immersed in different cultures. Thankfully, we have an expert on the show today who has done a multitude of research into how to ensure that you can navigate the challenges and the opportunities that global virtual teams present. Her name is Theresa Hollema, and she's written a book called Virtual Teams Across Cultures. It is a great guide to how to ensure that you can harness the power, indeed the power of these global virtual teams, and make sure that you maximize the diversity within them. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Karin Reed. I'm a 4-time author, Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, and communication expert on helping people to own the room, whether it be a physical one or a virtual one. Welcome to Speaker Dynamics. Theresa Hollema, thank you so much for being here today.
Karin, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We could have a very long conversation, but I'm going to try to keep it to 30 minutes. But we have so many overlapping interests and also areas of expertise that are very much, tangential and aligned. So I'm excited to talk to you about something that I've struggled with in my work. I work with a lot of global companies, a lot of companies that are integrating, many of whom are virtual now, and struggling to figure out how to have this cultural awareness and cultural competency with their colleagues when they are fully virtual. So you are an expert in this.
Well, expert is a strong word, but I have a definite interest, and it's my passion, actually.
Well, I'm going to label you an expert. So
okay.
You have been dubbed an expert in this, and it is true. You certainly have the credentials to back it up. But how did you get into this space? What piqued your interest, and how did you become kind of a go-to consultant for these challenges with virtual global teams?
Right. So I have a business background. I've come from the US originally, and I have a business background. And I came more than 25 years ago to Europe to work on a 3-month project. And I ended up marrying our consultant. So, yeah, good for me and good for the project as well, by the way. And he's a Dutchman, which is why I'm now located and living in the Netherlands. And so I was new in Europe, and I was on projects. I was leading acquisitions in Eastern and Central Europe. I was implementing ERP packages. But for me, what was always very interesting was that cultural dynamic. I mean, I had it in my marriage, but I also had it in the teams that I was involved with. And what I noticed was sometimes this cultural element led towards creativity and fun and energy, and sometimes it led towards frustrations and disasters. So I was very curious about that. What makes it work, and what happens with us because we're coming from different locations, different cultures.
Yeah.
So I started studying it on my own, and about 15 years ago, I entered the profession of cultural training and consulting. I was working for Fons Trompenaars Hamden Turner, which is located in Amsterdam. And I was just really passionate about it. But I also recognized that I needed to go a little bit further. And so I also studied to become a team coach. But then my clients were saying to me, great, Theresa, we're working across cultures, we're working in teams, but we're also working virtually. Can you help us understand that? And so 10 years ago, I started focusing on that topic well before the pandemic. And that's how I bring this together, focusing on virtual, multicultural teams and leadership, change, and getting things done. So that's my passion.
That's really interesting, Theresa. And gosh, I wish I knew you 10 years ago, because as I before Zoom was a thing, I was working on helping people to communicate well through a webcam as well as, through any sort of camera. And, I always talk about how, the pandemic made me a 10-year overnight success, because they're like, oh, the curriculum that you came up with a long time ago is very much mission critical today. So for our listeners, for our viewers, explain some of the challenges that are unique to virtual teams that are global versus, those who might have, be multicultural, but are in the same physical place?
Yeah, there are many challenges. And I think that's what's interesting is that if we approach working virtually the same as we do as if we're in the same office, then in fact, things will go pear-shaped because we need to do it actually differently. So it's a little bit counterintuitive. But let me start with just location. So the configuration where people are located can have a huge impact on the team. So for instance, do we have people that are sitting in headquarters and everybody else is far away? So those people in headquarters have some sort of advantage? Right. Or are some people near key stakeholders, like a key customer or a key supplier? Do we have majority groupings and minority groupings? And do the majority somehow dominate because of their way of working and their decision-making and their desires are more pushed ahead versus the minorities who don't have a voice?
Right.
We also have this idea that a group of people, and then you have something called isolates, where you have one here, one there, and they just don't seem to get attraction. Yeah. But what's also interesting is if that isolate is a leader or somebody that has a key quality that is crucial for the team, actually, this is better for the team, for the virtual team, because then the team is almost forced to be inclusive and they develop processes and meeting structures and things like that to be inclusive for people far away. So to start with, configuration has an impact.
Yeah. And I ask a question about configuration? Didn't mean to interrupt you, but what would you say is the most difficult configuration to navigate?
Well, I'll put it into a pool. The most difficult are when anybody is sitting next to somebody else.
Okay.
So the easiest is actually when we're all sitting in a different location. But as soon as we start to get people together, then we start to form cliques. And that can turn into an us versus them if things aren't managed well. And the reason I mention that is because that is actually the most common configuration that I see in global organizations. Thank goodness there's a couple people together so they can have lunch and they can have meetings. But actually, and in fact, people noticed this during the pandemic because all of these multi-location teams all of a sudden became 100% remote. And I was told many times, they said, this is so much easier because everyone is the same.
Oh, interesting.
And that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of mirrors what we found we've written 3 books on meeting science and hybrid being the most challenging because you have that proximity bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, where you have a tendency to interact more with the people who are with you, like physically with you or close by. You also might trust them more and, find more value in their opinion just because there is that familiarity of just, through osmosis of being in the same space. And it sounds like that is also the case for the configurations you're talking about, but then you're layering, different cultures on top of that, which makes it supremely difficult, correct?
So this is where I get excited. So what happens when cultural diversity and geographic distance come together? And so virtual working and cultural diversity come together. And so that's, let's say, my contribution towards this field, because you have a lot of people that are focused on working virtually and a lot of people that are focused on cultural diversity. And I'm one of the few that really brings it together.
It's so critical.
And and you're right, because this is the reality of global organizations. So for them, they're very interested in this integration.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that because geographic distance, it impacts us that we also have a psychological distance. Mm. So when we have let's say multi-location situations, I'm much closer. I can see the detail of my local colleague. She has a great sense of humor and she did a great presentation this morning, but my geographically distant colleagues are just more abstract because we think of them as psychologically distant as well. Yeah. And so we can give a label to them, French or Italian or American or whatever, until we get to know them. And that takes some effort. So yes, I can keep talking about cultural diversity and virtual work integration, but for sure it makes it more challenging, but I also want to point out it makes it more interesting because the research has shown just the fact that you have different people in different locations has the potential to bring about more innovation and more production, higher performance.
Yeah, it absolutely makes total sense. And, just harnessing that, though, is challenging without having, some of the major issues crop up that you don't even realize. So let's talk a little bit about why somebody would reach out to you to engage with you. What would be the typical, here's the problem, Theresa, like have they diagnosed what's wrong, or do they come to you just saying, hey, something's not working right. Can you help us figure out what that is and then help us figure out a solution?
So they come to me for many, many different reasons. First off, we have had requests where we have this us versus them. So we have a group of marketing that are sitting in Japan and a group of production that are sitting in the Netherlands, and they're not getting along. Please help us. Mm-hmm. So you have very much this geographic distance and cultural diversity coming together. I also have requests where a global team is forming and they're recognizing, hold on a second, this is not as if we're working locally. Please help us to figure that out. So they're very proactive, recognizing this is just a different space. Also, I have many requests for global leaders. As they are entering that space, they want to leverage and support the development of their global team in a way that makes sense. And they also start to recognize that what worked locally isn't working for them globally. And so they want some support to figure out why the difference and then what they can do to be more effective.
And what's interesting that you point out in the book is, you would have global leaders who would be, leading, multinational, multicultural teams, but oftentimes they became expats and they were put into the country and they were absorbing the environment, and that helped them to increase their own, cultural competence, which is something that you do talk about. But you can't do that very easily with a virtual team.
Karin, this point is the point for global collaboration now. So you're absolutely right. Previously, people were traveling and they would know what China felt like because they could go there. But now they're not traveling. Budgets are cut. We care about the environment. And also virtual collaboration has increased dramatically, particularly now that people know it can work from the pandemic.
Right.
So the big question I'm holding is, how do people, while they're sitting in their own country and they're tasting and feeling and seeing and touching their own culture, try to understand how their colleagues are working, what's important to their colleagues in another location, and particularly if they're making a decision that will impact that location. How do they do that? And it is possible, for sure it's possible, but it takes a lot of intention and it takes a lot of effort as well, and communication and collaboration with people from other cultures through the technology. So it's much easier to go local. I'm sitting in the Netherlands. Here I am. Everything must be Dutch in the whole world because that's what I see and feel. But as soon as I click on and somebody says something or I receive an email, I know I'm in a different world.
Yeah. I've been doing some training recently for people in Asia Pacific, and that is the exact opposite of the time zone where I sit. And it's fascinating. It was fascinating for me because, I started off very early in my part of the world and it was very dark. And then steadily my background became lighter and lighter as the sun came up. But the opposite was happening for them. And I was seeing their windows get darker and darker and darker. So, there was at least an awareness of a time zone lapse. But, once they turn off that camera, it's very difficult to put yourself in their shoes and understand what environment they are walking into as soon as they leave the office. So what are some of the things that you suggest? I know that there are myriad ways that you can combat this, but what are some of the basics? Like, what would you begin tackling?
So what we're talking about is, how do I learn about another culture? Mm-hmm. And one of the perfect places to do that, or vehicles to do that, is the team itself.
Mm.
The team is bringing people from other different cultures who can explain, or at least we can support them to be able to explain what's happening locally, what's happening in their world, what's important to them. And so, for instance, an idea is once a month, a different person or persons on the team give a presentation about their culture, about their country, about their factory, about their location. What's important? How do we make decisions there? Share some pictures so that through the team members can learn about each other's cultures. On your own, you can read books, you can watch films, you can take an interest, you could read the newspaper, you can speak to people who are locally from that culture, meet with them, ask questions, use them perhaps as a bridge. So if you're struggling, for instance, or you want to understand more about working in Dubai, I have a neighbor here who happens to be from Dubai. Let me speak with them as well. So there are many resources, and particularly in global organizations, that by definition, we have people in those locations. It's just a matter of making this a habit, making this a ritual or a desire, even a norm within the company to learn about each other's cultures. We can have lunch and learns, different ways of spreading. So I think the leaders in a team can take a very proactive role in helping the team to develop cultural competence together.
Yeah. And what is the risk of not doing that?
Right. So thank you for that. Assumptions, misunderstandings, expecting that everything's like I think it should be, frustrations with each other, conflict. So there's an opportunity. And what's the positive side is creativity, innovation, and shared learning.
And you had some great examples in your book, and I will show the book to our viewers and I'll talk about it. It's called Virtual Teams Across Cultures. My got wet, which is kind of a ridiculous story, but I was able to still use my highlighter on it before it got really wet. But you had some great examples that put it into this lifelike framework. And one of the things that you talked about was a leader who knew that the team was working late in another part of the world, and also knew that, after dark, it can be, a slightly sketchy situation. So they arranged for taxis to take the team home rather than having them try to figure out how to do that via public transportation. So you can make these, what might seem like small gestures, but can have a dramatic impact on how you are viewed as a leader of a culturally diverse team. Correct? So
the story you're bringing up was very much a leader who was able to sense and was caring from a distance. This person is originally from China and living in the UK. So he was developing cultural competence through his own experience, but then he was leading a team in India. And he's just speaking to him. I was able to interview him a couple of times. And just the way he was caring for the team, creating the team, really putting effort and energy into saying, how can they find me virtually? How can I make sure that they know I'm here for them, even though there's a distance? And so your example there was so beautiful and so impactful because he's caring from a huge geographic distance. That means he needs to understand their lives, take an interest in what's happening, be conscious of, oh, wait a minute, these are late hours and could be dangerous. Can somebody help me? Can I get some advice on how to lead, how to manage this for these people? So, I think it's so crucial that as we are developing the leadership competence in a global team, that we are also recognizing the different senses we have to use, even though we're not sitting there.
Yeah.
One of the things that we saw during the pandemic, but is also very, very true, is that expert leadership is really a challenge within the virtual space. You can't be everywhere all the time. So leaders recognize they need to develop, let's say, more competence, more leadership skills or competencies to be able to support the people, support and coach, and even from a distance. And that's beautiful to see.
What does that look like because a lot of the people who are followers of this show are leaders. What does that look like for the leader to, gain that cultural competence and to, successfully lead this culturally diverse virtual team? What do you suggest? What are some strategies that they can employ?
So one would be investing in building those relationships, even though they're far away, and how easy it would be just to send a please do this by Thursday. But no, really get rid of in fact, I spoke to an Italian leader who once said, every communication is an opportunity to build a relationship with somebody from a distance.
Beautiful.
So yeah, exactly. Thinking about those things as well. Interestingly, one-on-ones in the virtual space are crucial. And I've heard this from many leaders, but more importantly, from people who are the recipient of the one-on-ones, because this is their opportunity to tell their story, to be heard, to be seen for the situation that they are in, which is unique and so different than where the leader is sitting or where the other team members are sitting. Yeah. So those one-on-ones, regularly, reliable. In fact, I've heard some leaders saying that the person on the team member will design them and set the agenda, play a big role for virtual teams, virtual leadership.
I am a huge fan of one-on-ones in this space as well. And over my research, what I found in talking to those who were during the pandemic doing onboarding through virtual means, they said, I feel like I know the people we brought on during the pandemic better than those who we did prior to, because, this environment creates, a very physically distant but intimate space. and he's like, I know their kids, I know their pets, I know the names of their pets, and there's a closeness there that can be built through those one-on-ones, but it requires, as you said, intention and time. But that investment is so important, because otherwise you're not going to know if the team is working well together or not, because you can't manage by walking around. Walking around might be walking around your home office, which is not going to tell you a whole lot. So I love that we're very much aligned on that. And also, I wouldn't be the on-camera coach if I wanted to say this, but the value of the richness of video as a medium, you are also a fan of, correct? Especially in cross-cultural teams, correct?
Big fan. Yeah, there are exceptions. So, right, some people may not be feeling well, or some things are happening in their environment, or some people are neurodiverse. So for them, it can be uncomfortable as well. But in general, the camera is the means on which I can get to know you better. Yeah. And in fact, what's interesting, there's some research that shows that if you could turn on your camera and you choose not to, then you are sending me a psychological signal that you want to maintain distance, that you only want to focus on tasks and the agenda. But if you could turn on your camera and you do, then you are sending me a signal that you want to get closer. Build trust, get to know each other, send me some cues about you. Yeah. So yeah, the camera can play a big role in building trust and team spirit. Yeah.
Well, and eye contact is one of the foundations of trust, and whether you are on camera or off. And obviously, if you're looking at a black box, you're not going to get eye contact. But one of the things that you also talked about was a specific example where people were just interpreting the actions completely differently based upon their cultures. It was about giving feedback and following up. So there was a task that was given. Tell us a little bit about that.
This one I see everywhere. It's so common and so classic. So here's the scenario. You have a new team, a new virtual team. You're a new leader, and you have had your first meeting. And everybody was there, tasks were shared, everyone agreed, the minutes have been taken, have been posted in the team channel, all good. Now what do you do? Do you call everyone just to see how they're doing? Or do you say, no, if they need something, they will call me? And this one can be very often misinterpreted. So for instance, people coming from, for instance, the US or the Netherlands say, no, I won't call. If I call them, it shows them that I don't trust them, and I trust them. So I will wait. And if they need me, they can find me. Whereas other countries, for instance, Italy or in Mexico, they're waiting for your call, because if you call them, that shows that first off, they're important to you, that you want to build that relationship. It's a new team, that their work is a priority, and things change. So perhaps there's something that needs to be discussed. And I see this scenario really between the US and Mexico, Sweden and Italy, Netherlands and Taiwan. I mean, I see it everywhere. And as you say, it's just a very common post-meeting ritual that can be very differently interpreted.
Right. So micromanaging versus, oh, they care. Yeah. Very, even very different interpretation. Right. So what do you tell leaders to do? Should they just ask the team members, what do you prefer? Or what do you think?
Well, yes, exactly. So the first thing will be look at what you would prefer, because that's generally what you will do. I've had managers call nobody, and I've had managers call everybody, and both of them were a mistake. So look at your own preference, and then, yes, have a conversation with the team. This is the point, is that through this work and through sort of figuring this out together, is that the team learn about different ways of working, different priorities, looking at themselves. What's my priority? What am I expecting? And then they develop cultural competence while sitting in their own countries.
There's so much that we could talk about. I knew this was going to be the case. I would encourage everyone, if you are a manager of a global virtual team, if you are on a global virtual team, read the book. It is an easy read, even whenever you've gotten it all wet. And it has so many great strategies and tips, and just some things that raise your awareness that you may not have realized without it being pointed out and supported by research throughout. It's a very valuable book for anybody who is facing what is a very common scenario. Theresa, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you the question that I ask all of the folks who appear on Speaker Dynamics on the Room, which is, what is the one big takeaway for our listeners and viewers?
Yes. Well, I would like to share with you sort of my contribution to this field, which are the three ways that cultural diversity impacts a virtual team. And it's what I call within the team, between the locations, and outside the team. And just very quickly, within the team is, we've been talking about this, Karin. It's people are bringing their assumptions, their cultural ways of being into the virtual space. And there's an opportunity to learn from each other through that. We also spoke about between the locations. So that's when we start to have this us versus them, and we start to have cultural stereotypes to describe the other, always late or never gets to the point. Yeah. But then the third way is also quite important, which I call outside the team. So you can have the perfect virtual team, and they could be working very well together and have good team spirit and support each other. But they're all sitting in a different location. And those local locations can impact the virtual teams in ways that you would never expect. And if a leader isn't ready to learn about the cultures where their people are, and also be ready to engage in these dilemmas that may arise, that's crucial. So that's my point, is that it's not just your team, it's also the locations where they are.
So recognize that and educate yourself and educate your team and create that opportunity. Thank you so much, Theresa Hollema, for educating me and educating our listeners and our viewers. It's been a really valuable, very fast 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Karin. It's been really my pleasure. Thank you.
I feel like we barely scratched the surface in all that could be discussed about how to make global virtual teams successful. So I would encourage you to pick up her book. It's really a great resource. So Theresa works with a lot of companies who self-identify that they have a problem with navigating the cultural diversity within their global team. But, maybe you're on a global team and you're thinking, well, we seem to do a pretty good job working together. We get our work done and there's really no conflict. Is that good enough? Perhaps it's not. So that is the topic of discussion in the bonus episode that you can listen to. If you go to speakerdynamics.com/bonus content, you can listen to Theresa and I kind of tackle that conversation about how to ensure that you are not looking at your cultural diversity as something that you just manage your way through, but rather to think about it as something to maximize. So if you want to hear more about that, you can tune in at speakerdynamics.com/bonus content to listen to that snippet of conversation I had with Theresa. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for continuing to be a loyal listener, a loyal viewer to Speaker Dynamics Own the Room. Please feel free to pass it along to colleagues and friends who you think might also find value in it. But for now, I want to just thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, everybody.